I've recently watched Keith Wood's excellent video entitled The Growth Delusion, which I implore everyone to watch if you have not yet, and it had me thinking of what the end goal of neoliberal perpetual capitalism is. In extremely simplified terms, the current system of perpetual economic growth is unsustainable and can surely only lead to disaster. While many will argue that the materialist worldview of the modern neoliberal is inherently nihilistic, I believe that this may be a misunderstanding of the problem at hand and perhaps a grave underestimation of the enemy. The rarely spoken about end goal or motivation of neoliberal capitalism is the ascendancy of mankind from terrestrial and natural constraints. Think of it in terms of the Sid Meier Civ game series, the attitude of a scientific victory. All of human existence being a linear progression towards leaving our wretched Earth behind and sending a colonial ship to another suitable planet, or perhaps using science to extend the lifespan of humans to near immortals. One can look at it as a metaphysical, almost religious pursuit, a final step in Freud's death drive to become inorganic once again. However, not through death and destruction, but through scientific progression and cultural advancement. Now, before you begin to write angrily in the comments, let me explain further. One could see examples of this in the extreme popularity of science fiction series where mankind rules the stars, freed from earthly constraints. We are fascinated and inspired by these stories of man ascending out of his primordial homeland into the vast, unexploited beyond of space and the universe. Or perhaps in the growing trend of freezing oneself before death in the hope that at a later date technology will allow for that individual to live once again, free from the tragic mortality of human existence. Or perhaps, like me, you may have even uttered these words before in your life. I don't need to worry about X disease when I'm older. In 60, 70 years, medical advancement will be able to keep me alive through that. All of this, I argue, is extreme delusional cope for a political and economic system that is inherently unsustainable and a way for modern man to deal with the continued existential dread after the death of God. I won't bore you here with the details of perpetual growth capitalism. For that, please go watch Keith Wood's video. But there has to be some other motivation for the perpetuation of the wretched system of the present. A goal so profound it rivals the paradises detailed and promised in religions, an implicitly agreed upon end goal of materialist science and technology, of transhumanism and securing the continued existence of humanity beyond terrestrial or even solar threats, where one participates willingly in the system so perhaps one day we can build the ultimate materialist paradise. A paradise in which mankind and its technical supremacy over nature leaves behind the constraints of material scarcity and the biological limits of our mortal, fragile bodies. How else can any of this be justified? The main argument against this, I suppose, would be the reality that the iron worker clocking into his shift, the waiter serving tables, or the capitalist financier banker, for example, don't get out of bed in the morning with the explicit goal of working and living in this current system so that his great-great-grandchildren will be able to terraform Mars or live until his 200th birthday. To think this to be true would be nonsense, for of course they work ostensibly for their paychecks, to provide and support the continued existence and material comfort of themselves and their families. However, does it really matter the internal motivations of the horse when the cavalry is charging full speed into oblivion? This logic also fails when it is clear that many of the numerous atrocities of the 20th century were committed in large part by people simply earning a living and doing their jobs. One can also explain away this current situation as a logical conclusion of Enlightenment ideals, where man using logical and rational thought can science away the shortcomings of human existence. This idea, while noble in principle, fails to address the current situation where progress is increasingly coming at the expense of the natural world, but also the spiritual and cultural worlds. However, we are getting far too past the topic of this video, and I will be addressing this in future videos. I think it is important for everyone on the so-called dissident right to be aware of this. The course set forth for us currently is leading us towards a Wall-E tier existence, which perhaps is the only based film from Disney in the 21st century. So before one derides the neoliberal GH elite as godless nihilists, we must always be aware that these people have a definite teleological world goal. However, this end goal is perhaps even more sinister than simple nihilism. The goal for which they fight for every day is the rejection of all natural constraints of human existence. In essence, they live not to serve a god in hopes of salvation, but to become gods themselves. I hope this video did not come off as too much of an Alex Jones, conspiratorial black pill, misery porn type video. But I think that in order to fight an enemy, one must truly understand their motivations and ambitions. And I'm not sure if I have seen this perspective anywhere else. I wanted to make a video about it. Leave your comment as to what you think below this video. Yeah, thank you so much. Cheers.